Hello everyone, it's DuckFaden07 and today we are playing Wizard Tribal in Modern. Okay, so let's go through this deck. We are playing this deck thanks to the new card from the Lord of the Rings edition, a Flame of Honor. This card says, if you control a wizard, you can choose two modes. And the modes are draw two cards, destroy target artifact, and 5 damage to target creature. So if you control a wizard, you get to choose two of these, and this is Wizard Tribal. All the creatures in the deck are wizards, so it's pretty much you in a lot of most situations you get to use the both modes, which makes the card really good in this build, and makes you really get the most out of this card. The more it's the most of you can get from this card while playing in any deck in modern. Okay, so I managed to build pretty pretty competitive wizard tribal deck, and I'm really satisfied with how it performs so far in the leagues. I played a regular MTGO league. First league with this deck ended up 4-1. I played several of friendly modern leagues, which is pretty much similar. A similar competitive level as the regular ones, and also got a 4-1 there. So I played just two leagues so far, but the deck is extremely fun to play, and I really wanted to share the gameplay as soon as possible. So let's just check some other options. So what wizards do we have in this deck? We have Asmo. This is one of the best ones, and the 0 mana one. With it works great with Etherwile, and it's our main removal in this deck. Okay, so we are playing a lot of enablers for Asmo. We have Cookbook, we have Etherwile, we have Step Through. We also have a Raffine Informant. This wizard says when it enters the battlefield, it connives. So if you have extra mana when you play this, you can play the Asmo. Also, Step Through, when you do the wizard cycling, you discard a card, so you can find Asmo and immediately play Asmo because you discard a card using this ability from the wizard cycling. Okay, so that are all the enablers, and we have some other wizards in this deck too. So on the 1 mana slot we have Burrenton Forge Tender. This is, in my opinion, best 1 mana wizard in format. Okay, this guy has a protection from red, and it completely solves the problem a lot of tribal decks have in format, and that is Fury. So this Burrenton Forge Tender basically completely denies Fury, and Lightning Bolt and the Unholy Heat, which are altogether the most common removals in the format, and the most problematic ones for aggro deck like this one. Okay, so what else is there? Meddling Mage, really strong wizard. It very good cards to play in modern. It helps get around a lot of strategies. It helps with Amulet Titan, with Cascade decks, with combo decks of all sorts, and it also helps protect against removal and a lot of other random stuff. Okay, so in this deck it is even better than usual because you have 4 Burnt and 4 Tenders to protect your mage and Asmo from the most common removals in the format. Okay, I already said that there's Raffine format as a Connive spell, which works very great with Oval Chase Daredevil. You just discard the Oval Chase Daredevil, similar to how the Ledger Shredder is used in the food decks. Okay, so there is a one-off Void Mage Prodigy in this deck. I'm pretty satisfied with the one-off from this card when I draw it, and sometimes even when I tutor for it. You can play this with Etherwile, and it can be a real surprise. You can put this into play with Vile as a surprise. Use 2 blue mana and sack some unimportant wizard to counter a spell, and then you can use this again later if you have more creatures. So it can sometimes be, it can sometimes even completely lock your opponent. Okay, on a 3 mana slot, aside from Flames of Honor, we have some one-offs which we often tutor for. and also there are some additional copies in the sideboard. Okay, so we have here Deputy of Detention. It is a wizard which can sorry, what happened? It is a wizard that can remove any permanent as long as it stays on the battlefield, and it works very good against rhinos and tokens. It because it removes all the tokens with the same name. So Reflector Mage, also very good, very playable creature in this format, especially in the Aether Vial deck. Same as the Aether Channeler. I play one copy of each for a bit of versatility. This can also draw a card, but Reflector says that opponent can cast this spell next turn. So both are very efficient, and also we have one additional copy of the same effect in the Venser Shaper Servant, but this can be used on other non-creature permanents too. And we have here a Riptide Laboratory, very strong land in the Wizard deck, which says that you can return wizard you control to its owner hand, and it's really, really common for me so far that I've really just disgustingly abused this land in this deck whenever I draw it, and it has been extremely, extremely good. Okay, so step through a 2 mana uncounterable tutor for any wizard in the deck, and also if you have Ether Vial, you can immediately play what you tutored for, and it works as also as enabler for Asmos, so it's very, very good, very strong in this deck, and altogether. I think a deck just works very well. We also have a Magus of the Moon here, tutorable one piece in the main, plus multiple copies on the sideboard, and just being able to have 4 mana to tutor for the Magus of the Moon can just win some games and can be a very important factor in a lot of games. Okay, so on the sideboard we have Orvar. Orvar is changeling which can be found with a step through, which is extremely powerful against the creativity. So another one copy of Reflector and Deputy of Detention each, another 3 copies of the Magus of the Moon. We have some Dranite Magistrate. This creature is also very, very playable card in modern right now, played in a lot of white sideboards, and it's also wizard, so you can also tutor it with step through, and it's a really powerful card against, especially against those cascade decks. Okay, so there is some additional Cascade hate. Here is a spell such as Sprite. It's not just against Cascade, it also works well against 1 mana removals in the format, especially with in an Aether Vial. In an Aether Vial deck, there is more living end and creativity hate costing 1 mana. I wanted to have one piece costing 1 mana. In a Mistcaller, you sacrifice this, and all creatures entering the battlefield that are not cast get exiled. There is also 2 copies of a Malevolent Hermit. This guy can be a good trick with Aether Vial. You can put this into play with Vial, immediately sack it for 1 mana to counter non-creature spell, and it's just a good stuff card. It also has a disturb, and can be fitted into a lot of matchups that are non-creature based, and you will often find easy replacement to get this card into the deck. Okay, so Avan Sensor, we have Magus of the Moon as a hate for Amulet Titan, but Avan Sensor is also probably the best other hate that is also Wizard. This is also a card tutorable by step through, and can be very good against Titan itself and some other strategies too. And it's also just a good card by itself, and sometimes you will just want it over something unnecessary for the matchup. Okay, so that is it. We will go now through the league and see how it went. Okay, so I'll start from the last match, and we'll watch the first one last because the first one was defeat. Okay, kept a slow hand, nothing special here. Just Magus, Asmo, Step Through, Flame of Honor, not a bad hand, but a slow one. Played against a Murktide deck. Okay, they went for the second consider, played Shock to Steam Vents, and obviously just holding the counter spell probably. So I went for something that I expected to get countered, but it didn't. I resolved with Burnt and Forge Tender. Forge Tender was really it's often just very good in this matchup. My opponent plays the Murktide and I decide to go for the Reflector. And then I started attacking my opponent. My opponent went for the heat on the Reflector. I don't know why, like, it wasn't really necessary. Maybe they just wanted the surveil ability, and also my opponent goes for the heat on the Voidmage Prodigy. I use the Forge Tender to save the Prodigy, but they had a Tavara. So I decide while my opponent is tapped to use the Flame of Honor, kill the DRC, draw 2 cards, and now my opponent has Murktide in hand they can play, but I also have Asmo, I have Uvenser, I have other stuff. So I played the Meddling Mage here, I named the counterspell because it's only card making me not able to bounce Murktide at this situation. And my opponent plays again Murktide as a 3-3, but that is definitely not enough. At this point, I go for the Prodigy, and I decide to go for the Asmo 2 on the same turn, finding the cookbook and just passing the turn with 6 creatures on the field, and my opponent is just too low on cards to be really a threat here. I go for Riptide, Bounce, Reflector, replay the Reflector, and the opponent concedes, so that was the game 1. They could have maybe played slightly better, but it still wouldn't matter much. I went for the mulligan to 5 in this match and decided to put back some lands and try to risk with this one lander. I got a good hand though. There's a cookbook, Asmo, Forge Tender, pretty good hand. I'm hoping for opportunity that my opponent taps out so I can play my Asmo. I go for the Forge Tender first, just in case I resolve the Asmo, I have a protection for him. My opponent decides not to let this resolve and uses the counterspell, which I was pretty glad to see. So opponent went for the expressive iteration on their turn, getting Delirium with the Reflector and casting the Ragavan, which presented me with the opportunity to resolve the Asmo, which was very important. I had the ability to play another cookbook, but I decided to just play the Force Tender because with Force Tender I'm secure that my opponent won't really be able to attack with Ragavan unless I let them to do this, and I decide to risk and prevent the Fury ability. But my opponent had the bolt, so they were able to connect with Ragavan, and now I was in a situation where I needed to top deck something good, and this Ragavan actually really helped me more than I cared about the damage. So I got another Asmo from the top of the deck, and they removed the second Oval Chase from my top, so that was pretty good for me. I got I got another Asmo on the field with some food tokens, which allowed me to kill this Ragavan for free. And now my opponent was also on 2 cards like me, and I was on high on life, so it was okay. It was okay for me, a okay position in which I could just hope for a top deck to get back into the game, because my opponent also was just in a top deck mode, same as me. Didn't want to play the second cookbook at this situation to not let them do the connive. So I needed a fourth land to be able to use the cookbook ability. And so in this position, like any top deck for me, basically was pretty much a good top deck. Because it either, if I get the land, get to use the cookbook to return a creature from the yard, and if not, I get a live spell I can play. So a very good position. Okay, I use my mana in this situation to crack some foods because I had a lot of food here, and I was able to use the mana and just make more food with 3 cookbooks on the field. I didn't use the third one, I was saving it for the other ability to get the Asmo back from the yard. So a lot of food tokens on the field, which means in case if I ever resolve Asmo, I'll be able to kill everything they have on the field. So a pretty decent situation for me. I just continued making the food tokens. So I went for not I cracked to crack another cookbook to get another Asmo in my hand. Decided to put Ethervile on 4, trying to recast the Asmo again. This time opponent has subtlety, and I decide to put Asmo on top. Of course, I really need to try to resolve this creature. Could have gone possibly for Flame of Honor draw 2 this turn, and to try to immediately recast the Asmo, but it wasn't really necessary, so I just went for it again and tried to recast the Asmo again. My opponent already used the counter spell and the subtlety, so if I get to resolve this guy, I get to kill everything. And they went to Tavara in response to my Asmo to try to put it on top again, but I used the Flame of Honor, kill the subtlety. In response, sack my food tokens, kill both DRC and the Shredder, and no more cookbooks in deck, but good position. Opponent has only 1 card in hand, and it needs to be a removal for my Asmo, or it's just I'm just going to start attacking and kill everything they have. They went iteration into another iteration into Unholy Heat, which was pretty good for the opponent. So at this point, I just put the Old Chaser Devil into play and use cookbook again in hope to finding another way to put Asmo into play. I only had Asmo and Force Tender in my graveyard at this point. Okay, opponent goes for the Shredder and the Murktide and get the ability. So I had the cookbook to bring back Asmo. I just needed another way to put Asmo into play, and luckily I got it immediately. It was a second at a while, so I got a while to put Asmo into play immediately, kill the Murktide, and that was too much for my opponent, and they conceded, so that was it. Okay, so that was match one. Let's go to the next match. Okay, keeping Vial, Cookbook, Force Tender, Asmo, pretty good hand, I would say. Starting with Ether Vial, this means I can cast Asmo immediately, put Asmo immediately on turn one, which is pretty good. I really love this interaction, and I get to turn two play put Force Tender into play in case they try to bolt Asmo or whatever. I get to play the Cookbook. I decided only to play one of the cookbooks. I decided to hold the second one in hand in case I need to discard it. So, end of turn, I put the Force Tender into place. I was able to attack for 4 damage. And I also got the Ether Vial plus Void Mage Prodigy, which was pretty good. So I played a land, attacking for 4 in case they play something scary like creativity. I get to put Void Mage Prodigy with Vial in hand and counter it. I did this for Nissa, and it seemed like it wasn't really creativity. It was just a Junt with Nissa. So I was able to sack the Forge Tender to counter the Nissa. So it was pretty good position for me. I also top decked Magus of the Moon for the turn and got it into play with a lot of basics. I decided to sack the Void Mage Prodigy to save the Magus, but they had another removal. So at this point they had one card in hand, and thanks to the cookbook in play, I was able to pay 4 mana, get Magus of the Moon back from the yard, and immediately put it back into play with Ether Vial. My opponent didn't have any non-red basics, which means they can't really play anything and can't really deal with this Haywire Might. I play another cookbook because I used the one. This means in case they kill my Magus of the Moon, I can again use the cookbook to bring back Magus from the yard and just put it again into play with with Ether Vial. I accidentally F6 here, and uh, my opponent successfully equipped the Ragavan, so I killed the Ragavan after equip, giving my opponent 6 life. And I played Voidmage Prodigy as a morph. For this league, I played 2 copies of Voidmage Prodigy, but I think for the finalist, I would just decide on one, although 2 was okay. As you can see in this example, it was pretty good in these slower matchups where opponent playing powerful spells that can decide the game. Okay, so that was a win in game 1 against Junt. Let's see game 2. This is match 2, game 2 against Junt. Okay, so I mulliganed one lander and kept a bit slow 4 cards, but still okay. I played a Tarn here. I have Raffine Informant on turn 2. Discard Oval Chase, hopefully just get it back for free again later. When I need it, I find the Rogran Triumph. I get Plains, I play the Raffines, and I had the 3 Flame of Honor at this point in my hand, and unfortunately my opponent killed my Raffine's Informant, which means I can't get the 2 modes. This is one of the rare situations when I wasn't able to get the full value out of Flame of Honor, but it was okay. I draw into Cookbook and I get my Daredevil for free from the graveyard. I discard the card uh, opponent destroyed it, and so this way I find another cookbook and made a second food token, which means I was able to kill the goif again immediately before it becomes 6/7. Okay, opponent got fetch here to find Titania, put Titania into hand, and at this point I just had to risk it. I didn't really have to risk it. I wanted to go for the wizard cycling into just finding the meddling mage, but I forgot that I sided the meddling mages out of the deck, which meant that it's not possible to do this. So I had to take Raffine's Formant instead at this point and just use it for value. I was able to get a second food token and play the Magus of the Moon, which means my opponent can't really cast the Titania they have in hand in case they get another land. They had Tarmogoyf at this point for the blocks, but I top decked one of my bouncers to finish the game, and that was it. Okay, so let's go to the next game. Okay, so I kept the one lander, but with two Ether Vials, it's not really a big problem, usually. But my opponent did have a Stubborn Denial for the first vial, so it was a Sultai Shadow, I think. Opponent started with a Denial on turn 1, Goif on turn 2, and I immediately I got a vial to put the Asthma into play, and then play the Cookbook in case I need to deal with this Asmo that way, with this Tarmogoyf that way, sorry. Opponent goes for the Tutsis, discards Flame of Honor, and since this type of deck my opponent is playing is just playing a lot of different options to deal with the creatures. I don't think Meddling Mage is a very good choice here, so I just decide to discard both Meddling Mages to kill this Goyf before this Dresden goes into the graveyard. So I get to kill the Goyf, but I didn't get a draw card from the Channeler, but it is fine. My opponent is on a 6 life, I have 2 creatures on the field, plus Riptide Laboratory, plus Ether Vial, and this is pretty good position for me. So I needed to stay back. At this point, my opponent had a Death Shadow. I had like a Riptide Lab to go for the block and a bounce, and then use the vial on my turn, which was pretty good. My opponent had just 2 cards in hand at this point. They decided to use the push to get rid of my Asmo. But I wanted to do this on Channeler anyway, so I didn't care that much. I went for bounce channeler, vial channeler in, draw a card, and then block bounce again. I think this is just a very effective strategy in these mid-range matchups, and this is the reason why I was also thinking about possibility of going for um, playing second as a channeler instead of the first Venser, but Venser was fine choice too, so it is really close. Okay, I go for another draw with the channeler. I discard card to be able to play the Asmo. Get another cookbook from the deck, play the Riptide, play another cookbook, get second food. It wasn't really necessary, but it was fine. Now I have 2 foods in case I need to respond. Opponent targets the Asmo and I decide to let that happen and just use my Riptide on the channeler and just continue putting it into play with while drawing cards. I think this was like the best way to win this game. Just draw infinite cards with the channeler. And finally, I did get the Oval Chase Daredevil to get more free foods with the cookbooks. I also had a double Riptide Lab available at the moment. So this means at this point, if my opponent goes for, if they go for the removal, I have a double way to protect it, and I decide to sack one of the food tokens. At this point, in case they have the dress down, they don't have a kill, but they just went for fetch to find the arbor. I just continue making these food tokens while the channeler in again. Channeler just drew a bunch of cards this game. He was incredible. I play another land. Um try to cast the Flame of Honor to finally try to draw those two cards, but it didn't happen. Still, I was in okay position. Just drawing card each turn, extra card each turn with the channeler. And my opponent did have a huge shadow plus grist, but they were able to successfully do anything with it. And again, I did just channeler block, bounce, channeler with the Riptide, and just continue drawing cards. It's really incredible just how many cards the channeler actually draw this game. And I at this point I now found I find Asthma 2, try to resolve it. I go for draw a card first, just trying to find maybe another while to get around counterspell. Um, Now I get the Asmo. I was able to kill all their creatures, and at this point my opponent concedes the game. That was it. So let's go check the game 2. Okay, had to mulligan that one lander and kept the 5 cards here, but while Asmo Oval Chase is a very good keep, but unfortunately opponent has the Totsis, which means this hand now becomes significantly worse. Opponent starts pretty aggressive with the turn 2 Death Shadow. They start attacking. I have Mind Sensor here. It was just good stuff, inclusion, not really great in this matchup, but it was better than some other cards I had in main, like Force Tender, obviously not great here. And my opponent had the dress down. I chose not to jump block it. So they had a dress down to finish, and that was the game. Okay, so let's check out the game 3. Mulligans to 6 to get a pretty decent hand. Again, turn 1 while Asmo is incredibly strong with any deck you play it in. They go for the Inquisition, but I put Asmo into play in response. Find a cookbook. Opponent lets me keep it and discard the Magus of the Moon instead. This is how I sideboarded in this matchup. I got the 4 standards out and the Void Mage Prodigies and the Venser. Opponent just played the Ikoria on 2. This usually means that my opponent has turn 3 Vampire Hex Mage. I got the while up on 2, continue attacking with Asmo with double Flame of Honor in my hand, which is pretty good. Opponent shocks again to go for the Hex Mage. And they cast this Lorota. I go for the Flame of Honor as instant speed divination here, drawing 2 more cards and getting the step through, which is incredible really in this deck with if you have when you have Ether While up, and you can just go for the step through, find the reflector, and I just bounced their Icor invasion and attacked for 3 with Asmo, putting my opponent down on 3 life. So they had double Death Shadow, but I have another step through. To go for the Deputy of Detention. My opponent just has 1 blue mana open, which means they can't really kill the Deputy at this turn, which means I have lethal, and that is the game. So pretty fun game where this guys just and step through just won me a game easily. Okay, so that was game 3, win number 3, and we can now go watch the match 4. Okay, match 4 kept 1 lander on the draw with Ethervile. I think with Ethervile and on the draw makes this keepable, especially because I also have Diasmo to put into play on turn 1. Find the cookbook. This opponent played some version of those new Samwise combo decks. I think this is the version I saw Canister play earlier today. So I played the cookbook, I find the triome, I start making the food tokens, attack for 3, put my opponent on 14. When they find their own cookbook and they find their own Asmo and their own Overchase Daredevil to make 2 food tokens and kill my Asmo. I had a second counter on Rafine Informant to do the ability and find the third land I really needed at this point to be able to put Asmo into play immediately, sack 2 foods to kill their Asmo. So it was really a battle of Asmos in this game. Who is going to get more Asmos? And my opponent got the second one to kill my Asmo, of course. It was still okay situation for me. I had the Flame of Honor. I was able to play it for 3 mana, get the max value, just kill the Asmo, and I decided to draw 2. Didn't get the land, but I got some other useful cards. Also have Etherwile and plus the step through, which is obviously very powerful. I play the second while and now I have opportunity to put Asma into play again, and also I got more cookbooks to make Asma just more relevant, and this puts me in a really good position. I also put the Forge Tender into play. It can save me from Asmo, but I misplayed this game. I forgot that I didn't play Asmo for some time and forgot this card says that creature deals damage to itself. So yeah, okay. So we will see that too. And end of turn, I just put the Asmo into play, find another cookbook, and I attack with Informant and put Reflector into play, bouncing their 8/8 construct. Which means I'm now putting opponents down on 5 life, and they do have Urza Saga, another activation, plus 2 cards in hand. But I have the Asmo, I have Step Through Venser, pretty good hand, pretty good situation. My opponent makes another large construct, but it doesn't really matter against all this stuff. What does matter is this Asmo with a lot of food tokens. So this is where I made a mistake. My opponent activated Asmo multiple times, and I sacked the Forge Tender to save my Asmo, but I targeted the wrong target. I targeted their Asmo. I should targeted my Asmo because the Asmo said that the actual creature deals damage to itself, so I needed to counter target my Asmo to prevent him from making damage to itself. But I got a good top deck here, so it ended up not being important, but it could have almost ended up differently, where it would matter. So it was definitely a mistake. But now I was able to get the Asmo again, kill their construct, and just to continue doing the thing, plus have after a while on 4 with Venser in hand, which is obviously pretty good. And I'm also very close to the lethal. Games take much longer when both players are using the cookbooks. It takes time for each turn to just each player do their cookbook abilities, especially when you have this much of them. I put Venser into play, bouncing their Urza Saga. I wanted more draws and more opportunities to just uh, raise my opponent. They're on 5 life. They can make 3 life by sacking the food token. But it is fine. I finally killed their Visitors here. I put a second counter on my vial and draw the Flames of Honor, which was pretty good draw. I get to attack for 5 damage, which means opponent survives on 3, which is and I had Asma on the field with the 2 food tokens and Flame of Honor in hand. So that is too much for the opponent, and the opponent concedes, so that was the game. Okay, so that was game 1. Let's check the second one. This one I lost. I had a good starting hand, 2 Raffine's Informant, 2 Step Throughs, and the Oval Chase Daredevil. Step Throughs means, and Raffine means I can go for turn 3 Asmo with Oval Chase Daredevil, which is pretty good. I play Raffines here, discard the Daredevil. But my opponent had the Asmo in the field, and now also the Steel Seeker, which is a very good engine. Steel Seeker plus Asmo dealing easily with the creatures, plus gaining a lot of card advantage. I had traded with one of the Asmos, but opponent had a second one. Maybe I could have like used not block the Fin Informant to use the Flame of Honor this turn, but yeah, because they just had another Rasmus, so it wasn't great for me. But yeah, never mind. I played my Asmo just to get the cookbook so I can get the engine going, start making food tokens. This way, when I resolve my Asmo, I'll be able to to do stuff with it immediately. I decide to use the Flame of Honor here without a wizard in the field. Of course, even Mind Silencer would have been useful here, but I just really needed to get rid of the Asmo. And at this point, opponent had too much going on. Still Seeker, um, two cookbooks on the field, Urza Saga plus another Asmos, so I just didn't have enough in this turn, and even the step through doesn't get me close to where I want to be. So I decided to just quit this one and go for the next game. Okay, in the game 3, in this match 4, I had a decent starting hand with the Meddling Mage, Flame of Honor, and the Magus, and two basics in hand for the Magus. Let's see how I sideboarded in this matchup. Again, I got my 4 standards out. I got Void Mage Prodigies out, and the Reflector and the Venser, so pretty much very similar sideboard plan to the last one. So I had my Meddling Mage on the cookbook. I knew they have cookbook in hand because they found it with Asmo, and I was able to play it before. So then I got the Magus on on the field with the 3 basics, which was pretty good position for me, and the Flame of Fener drawing me 2 cards, killing their Asmo. So I had multiple options. In this game, I decided to just resolve the Asmo, even though I wasn't able to play the cookbooks because of the Meddling Mage. Now I play the Reflector and start attacking with Asmo. Opponent had a bit of luck there and found the Springleaf Drum to get mana to start doing something. They traded with the Magus of the Moon, so I just tutored for another one, put it into play, and I have they were on 5 life. They have some food, but I have a lot of damage on the field. So I just started with the turn with the Raffine's Informant, doing the Connive, just drawing cards. With the Oval Chase Daredevil in hand, this Raffine Informant basically just draws a card, which is very good. The opponent is forced to jump block there, and but they weren't able to do much else with the Magus on the Moon on the field, and that was the game. Okay, so that was it. That was win number 4, and we can now watch the last game, a loss. The only loss in this league. In the match 5, I actually had a pretty decent hand. 4 Standard, Asmo, Flame of Fener, Void Mage Prodigy, a lot of good stuff here. Unfortunately, at the moment, no ways of resolving the Asmo. And I'm also just this was a mill matchup, and the 4 Standard is also not very useful here. I think this matchup is close, and maybe I should have just used my Void Mage Prodigy a bit better here. Maybe I should have just let this resolve and try to counter more important spell. Opponent played the Jace. They didn't have a solution for the Prodigy. I was able to I was able to put Asmo into play, but they were able to get rid of my my Vote Mage Prodigy, and now I had 24 cards in hand. And I was only able to put Jace on 2 loyalties, which means they can draw 3 cards, kill Jace and draw 3 cards, which is definitely a lot. So they got 3 crabs at this point, plus landed this, which is just too much, and I concede the game. So that was win number 4. Win that was a loss in the this game. Maybe I could have done more this game. Played a bit different, but okay. I kept a pretty good hand. After a while, into Asmo on turn 1, it's pretty good. I decide to use this immediately because they play that trap, hard trap. So I wanted to shuffle immediately on my turn before they draw another card from the turn. I play my cookbook. I start attacking with Asmo. Didn't get the land, but I had the vial, and they have a hard time dealing with vial, of course. And I had good creatures in my hand for the other vial. So I didn't have a way to put Asma into play last turn, so I waited for the top deck. I did get a red land, so then I used 2 of my cookbooks to get the food tokens, get the Daredevil from the graveyard, kill this Ruin Crab, and hold the Ether Vial in either for the Fatal Push or something else. Um, it's important in this matchup to get your shocks out and save basics for the Field of Ruin. I put Meddling Mage into play, naming Drowning Lock, and now I was also holding the Hermit, the Sprite, the Void Mage Prodigy. If I get another blue land, it can be pretty good, and that is it. Okay, so a pretty good position here, attacking for 5. With the Meddling Mage on the Drowning Lock, 2-3 counters in my hand. Really good position. Okay, so opponent goes for the crab, but I have the sprite, and I still get to use the while end of turn. So I put the hermit in, and with the hermit, that is exactly 8 damage lethal. So opponent concedes, and that was the win. Okay, so in this matchup, who plays first has a significant advantage. And I do have a lot of these disruptive creatures, but our opponent deck also definitely has ways to get around my stuff. So I didn't have a perfect mana. Mountain plus Riptide Lab meant I can't play the Meddling Mage on 2, only Hermit, and also opponent went for the Ghost Quarter. So I was just able to resolve the Hermit and hope to get the full value out of Flame of Fenrir next turn, but unfortunately opponent had a Fatal Push, so that wasn't really happening. And I went for the Deputy. It was a close game. It was a close game. Maybe if I didn't go for I should have gone for the Flame of Fenrir here, I think. And this way my opponent would go for wouldn't be able to I will be able to use the deputy better. I did get the cookbook here finally, start making foods to kill these crabs. My opponent only had one card at this point, but I was already on 13 cards in my deck, which is really, really low. And they just need like one land to kill me, and they also drew into another crab, which was pretty lucky because it was exactly what they needed to seal the game immediately. Maybe I would be able to get back into the game if they had like one or two bad draws, because I had the deputy here to exile all the crabs. I had meddling mage, flame of feigner for the next turn. So pretty good position, but they also had just huge amount of crabs, which is hard to deal with without Asmo on the draw, and that was the difference between the trophy and loss in this last game, and that was it. So there it is, the fully functioning Wizard tribal in modern, actual competitive Wizard deck, uh, playing a lot of really, really good hate pieces at the moment. Asmo is just a very good creature, main removal outlet in this deck, and just having four tutors for it is really good. And Ether While and in with Asmo with Ether While and deck is also just really, really good. Burrington Forge Tender, as I said, best one mana wizard. Really good hate piece against a lot of decks, against Fury decks, Unholy Heat, Bolt decks, protecting the Meddling Mage and Asmo, making them even better. Also, other stuff like Voidmane Prodigy and Magus of the Moon, and Cyber cards, of course. And that is it. So I'm pretty happy with the list. I would only do slight changes in the main, like maybe I'm thinking about second Ether Channeler instead of first Venser. Also, like maybe removing Diamond Mind Sensors from the sideboard, and also thinking between about playing one or two copies or zero copies of Voidmage Prodigy. But it was so far really good in some matchups that I really like at least one for now. That is it of the dilemmas. Riptide Lab was very, very important piece in a lot of matches I played. A really good land, a really powerful land that really wins games. And I think 21 is a good amount of lands so far. Having a tutorable Orvar with step through, which is so good. Also, same words for Magus of the Moon. And of course Asmo in the main and other stuff. I really like the list. I really like how it's doing so far. Enjoy the gameplay a lot, and I'm really looking forward to playing this again, tweaking it more. But I'm so far pretty happy with how things look at the moment, and that is it. Thank you for watching. If you want to have the channel, click like, click subscribe, and comment in the video. That's it for today, and goodbye.